Hey everybody, we'll get started in a couple minutes, just letting people funnel in for now. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our first webinar of the year. We are kicking off our recruitment and retention series. We will do a webinar every month focused on recruitment and retention, different topics surrounding that. And this is our first one. We will be focusing on using data to create a recruitment and retention plan for 2023. So looking at last year and how you can use that information to get you started for 2023. So let's jump in a couple things before we get started. Just want to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded. We will be able to send it out to you after everything. And for people, if you know anybody who wanted to attend but weren't able to, we'll have the video recording available for them as well. We'll send the slide deck to you as well at the end. For Q&A, feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. I will save those until the end for the most part, unless there's something super timely to cover. But whenever they come up, feel free to pop your questions into that Q&A section. And then we will do a Q&A section at the end, right after our panel. All right, before we do introductions of our panelists today, I just want to let you know who we are at CareAcademy. My name is Erin Wyndham Hill. I'm the program marketing specialist for CareAcademy. We are a mobile-first caregiver training platform. We have more than 300,000 skilled and unskilled direct care workers who have completed more than 1.5 million hours of training with us. Our big goals here are to recruit, onboard and upskill, retain, and measure outcomes. So we're all about helping you basically from start to finish with your agencies and help your caregivers get the training they need, as well as all of the upskilling that they want and everything in between in order to help you all out, especially with your recruitment and retention and your compliance and things like that. So that's what CareAcademy is. We'll get into more details a little bit later, but I just wanted to let you know right up front, and we'll give you some information about how to do a free trial and stuff like that at the end. So let's jump into our webinar today. We're going to do a quick starter activity before we even get into any of the meat of this. And this will just be on your own, so feel free to write these things down. Feel free to think about them to yourself, but we will revisit them. So writing them down can be helpful. I will give everybody about 3 to 5 minutes to do this on your own. So what I want you to do first is think about how recruitment and retention went for your organization in 2022 and write down your answers to the following questions. The first one is what went well for you this year? Second one is what could have gone better? And then what help do you need to improve retention and recruitment in 2023? So take a few minutes to think about those things, and then we will get into our content. I will come back in about 3-ish minutes. All right, let's jump into our intros. Feel free to finish writing if you need. But we will start with Jessica Jones. Jessica is the Senior Manager for Data Research and Analytics for CareAcademy. And Jessica, I'll hand it to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Erin. I'm the Senior Manager of Data Research and Analytics at CareAcademy. I've been at CareAcademy since August of 2020, so a little over 2 years. So my job is kind of overseeing the design and implementation of CareAcademy's processes for measuring caregiver and characteristic and outcomes, as well as how we use data to make data-driven decisions, which we'll be talking about today. So my background in long-term research, and I'm really passionate about linking kind of data with health outcomes to really improve the outcomes for the older adult population. So next slide. So as a leader in data and research and analytics, one of the key takeaways that I want you guys to walk away with as you guys think about how you use data to create goals around recruitment and retention is that data plus context equals the whole story. And so using that framework will really help you kind of create targeted strategies around how you can attack the challenges you face with recruitment and retention within your organization. So next slide. So first we talk about data. So first, and something that we apply within our own team as a data team is the first step is always evaluating your data. What data do you have access to? Is it raw data? Where are you keeping it? Is it in spreadsheets? Do you just track your kind of, when it comes to retention, or you just have your dates of your start dates and end dates, and you haven't really drawn any insights from it? What tools do you have available? So, I don't want to steal Courtney's thunder, but she'll get into like how AxisCare can be a tool that help you draw insights from your data around your recruitment and your recruitment pipeline, as well as your retention of your employees overall. So once you've kind of taken stock of what you have, what's available to you, next you want to draw insights, right? Before you take a goal, you want to know where you are right now. So if you have it available, reviewing historical trends, right? Looking back, we started with the starter activity. Looking back at 2022, what did that data look like on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis? If you have even farther data and you can go back years, how is that tracked over time, over the last couple of years? Are you seeing improvements or not? And then also calculating your baseline. Where are you starting right now? Before you can create a goal, you have to decide, okay, where am I starting right now? So then you can measure how you've improved, or maybe where you kind of are not seeing improvements. And then, there's a famous quote that says, what gets measured gets managed. So you need to also define moving forward, as you're thinking about creating these goals around recruitment and retention, what's your tracking the cadence? Who is tracking this data? What does that look like in your organization? Are you only tracking turnover and retention on an annual basis? Do you want to move to quarterly, monthly, weekly? What makes sense for your organization so you can have a better picture of what's working well and what's not working well within your organization as it relates to these challenges in your organization. So next slide. And then, like I said, data plus context. So data, looking at the trends over time of just pure raw data of recruitment and retention, that tells one story. It tells you where you are right now, where you've been in the past. As a researcher, it's really important. One of the big things is, like, as a mixed method research, is looking at quantitative and qualitative data. You want to look at the whole story. So then you want to look at indicators, right? Like, what are the defining characteristics of your organization that are impacting these numbers? So you may look at demographic information, right? Is your workforce reaching retiring age at an increasing rate? So you may want to look at kind of diversifying your talent pool. You look at everybody's talking about the recession. You look at the macroeconomic environment. Are people facing financial hardship? Is that something that's going to impact your ability to recruit and retain your workforce? And I understand that some of those things may not be in your control, but taking stock of those things, because they all matter. You want to look at your onboarding training experience, just your overall employee experience. If there's something that you're changing or you have changed in the past, if there's something that you've received feedback on in the past that you want to improve on, and taking a holistic view of what is happening within the organization. You may want to look at, when you're looking at recruitment, you may want to look at recruitment sources. Where are you recruiting from? Who are your partners in that way? Where are you seeing successes? And then you may also look at logistical challenges, or is it scheduling, and you getting feedback on that. And then how you create that picture is by asking for feedback. And there's a variety of ways in which you can do that. You can do exit interviews or stay interviews with your employees to open up that dialogue. You can do employee surveys, so you can survey your whole organization if you have that resource available. And then just in general, having an open dialogue with your staff, right? So you have care managers, a variety of staff, and just opening a dialogue to get a sense of where people are, what are their challenges, what is working well, what's not working well. So then you create a more complete picture of what is really impacting recruitment and retention within your organization, and then you can create a more targeted strategy. So next slide. So now that you have this whole picture, this more complete picture of your recruitment and retention successes and challenges, you can identify your top priorities, right? Because you're probably saying, hey, well, some of those things aren't in my control. Well, if you kind of take a whole stock of it, and you say, what is within my control? What can I take action on in this quarter or this year that I want to think that's going to move the needle? And like we said, we already defined what our tracking cadence is. We defined where our data is coming from. We defined the tool that we're using, and we can track it over time. And so then we can kind of start to see the relationship between some of those indicators that are impacting recruitment and how you can move the needle on that. So for example, some of the examples that I've heard from other organizations and kind of how they're attacking their strategy and creating a more targeted strategy. So like I said, do you have an aging workforce, right? That is a real thing. So if you're looking at your employee and you're like, oh, they're hitting that like 50 mark, right? You may think, well, what I want to focus on is recruiting a more diverse workforce and focus on my talent pipeline. Because if I can, attract more younger talent, newer talent, we can kind of mitigate some of the challenges of people starting to retire, right? If you're looking at terminations and people like voluntarily leaving your company, and you may recognize that it's due to company dissatisfaction. If you've done a survey or you've done exit interviews, then you may be able to disentangle the reasons why people may be dissatisfied with your organization. Some things you may be like, I can't address that, right? We have scheduling challenges, right? I can't give everybody the client that they want or the specific schedule that they want. But you may be like, oh, I can address the onboarding experience. I can, if they're really value training and further education, I can make some investments in that. Or are there some employee incentives that I can implement to address, a specific subset of like this pool of employees that may be satisfied with our organization, and that's impacting why they're leaving, early. So again, when you have that context, you can have a more targeted approach to how you kind of address those challenges, because I know it's like recruitment and retention is a huge area, right? Like, what am I going to do? But if you can kind of add that context, you'll be like, oh, I can't address this, but I can address that. Even looking at new hires not completing training, you may have looked at like, oh, what are some indicators? What are the challenges as far as like new hires? You're like, oh, not completing training. Then you may decide, okay, you know what? I'm going to invest in tools that increase engagement, right? Either through your kind of back office software, you can look into CareAcademy. There are a whole host of tools, but you may be like, this is what I want to focus on. And then, as I said, you already identified your data strategy and you can track it over time. Do we have impact, right? So those are some ways that you can think about, like how you're going to attack this recruitment and retention, your recruitment and retention strategy for the year. So next slide. And just to kind of plug in, think about how my team is thinking about this. Well, so we apply this framework as a team is, we've been also looking at how does CareAcademy impact retention for our clients. And we're looking at engagement with classes and time to onboarding and time to training and things like that. And we, if you're interested or if you're already a CareAcademy customer, we love to engage with you and talk to you about kind of what you're seeing, because we recognize that we have some more data that we want to collect, and we more insight. So if you have an opportunity to complete our survey, we'd really like to learn more about your retention and recruitment and your successes and challenges on that. But again, this is the framework that my team applies to kind of how we address and think about how we're going to impact the biggest challenges that you face, which one of them being recruitment and retention. So that's a short spiel on how you guys can think about it. So really appreciate the time. And if you have any questions, I'm looking forward to them at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Now we will throw it to Courtney McCormick, who is the Director of Client Success at AxisCare.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Thanks, Jessica. That was a lot of great information and a lot of good follow-ups to get real practical. I'll look at some visuals for a lot of the things Jessica said. So like Erin said, my name's Courtney McCormick. I am the Director of Client Success at AxisCare. I have the best job in the world. All I do is meet with agency owners, agency leaders like you guys, and talk to you about your back office systems and how you can be the most efficient and the most profitable and the most successful possible. We feel like if AxisCare users, if their agencies are becoming more and more profitable and successful, that's a win for us. When you guys win, we win. So I realize that we have lots of different friends in our audience today that use all sorts of different home care management softwares. AxisCare is the one that I can speak to. So I'll be talking about some of the tools that we have in AxisCare. I know that some of our, paralleled software management systems have similar things in place. So take what you can from what I'm going to say. A lot of the strategies go, are universal strategies here, what we'll be talking about. And you might have access to some of these. If you're interested in AxisCare, you can go to axiscare.com and check it out, or get in touch with me after this. So let's dive in. Go to the next slide, Erin. So as I meet with these agency owners, that's all I do all day, every day. I'm hearing about what you guys care about. And the main thing that you guys care about is this caregiver retention and turnover. Okay. So recruitment's also a very big deal. but that retention is a huge deal. So I've been fortunate enough to partner with CareAcademy a couple of times now to talk about what are the ideas for increasing retention. And we've come up with lots of good ideas on various different webinars, and mostly those ideas are coming from you guys, hearing how you are engaging with your caregivers and your employees and your staff to keep turnover low. And we love getting that. We would love to hear your retention ideas that have really worked for you in the Q&A or the chat box. Either one is good. So we can chat about that at the end. But like Jessica said, the real power in decreasing turnover, increasing retention comes from you seeing and understanding your own data. So I have a lot of agencies asking me like, hey, but can you benchmark this? What's the benchmarking? And benchmarking is important. It's important to know, hey, we're trying to keep turnover under 50%. That's just a kind of a loose goal. That would be a great goal for your agency to have. But it's most important, and you become the most successful when you are looking at tracking, knowing, understanding, visualizing your own data there. So inside your home care management system, I'm sure there are many ways you can pull these sorts of reports. Inside AxisCare, we're always putting in hire and termination dates. There are endless reports you can pull, literally endless, because you can create custom reports. But we also offer something called business intelligence at AxisCare. So business intelligence does exactly what Jessica was telling you to do. Take all this data, take all this info, look month over month. How many people did we hire? How many people applied? How many people were terminated? What was our applicant to hire ratio every month? And just with a click of a button, it's going to calculate everything for you, so you're not having to do all that math for you. So when you're looking at your own data, some of the most important things when it comes to tracking that retention, from what I'm seeing these huge agencies, the most successful agencies do, are tracking those termination dates or end dates. So it doesn't have to be it can be a voluntary termination, right? So anytime a caregiver leaves, track those end dates inside of your home care management software. And then view them in a tool like our business intelligence. And I'll show you that in just a second. Also, just looking at what is our turnover rate. So looking over the last year, looking at 2022, over the last 12 months, what is the turnover rate? And then also, like Jessica said, breaking it down, what are those monthly trends? So we're looking at that like annual turnover and what are our monthly trends there. And we're going to get a little bit more granular as well. And then using this real data to set goals that are realistic and attainable for your agency. So if you were to just take a benchmarking report that's on the market and say, hey, our retention needs to be 40%, our turnover needs to be 40%, and this is how many people should be applying. If you don't know what you've been doing in the past, you are setting most likely very unattainable goals. It's going to knock the wind out of your sails, out of your schedule or sales. It's not going to be a great thing. So, we are going to get to, and we're about to get to this part where we're like, what are some like creative ideas for increasing this retention? But as you are hearing us talk, you can hear us say, knowing your data, knowing the trends inside your own agency is really key. It's the most powerful tool that you have to be able to see those. Let's jump to the next slide, Erin. So these are some screenshots of our business intelligence here. So we have, as you can see on the left, 7 different dashboards that you guys can look into, and you can see all sorts of information inside each one of those dashboards there on the left, whether it's financial info, client info. Right now, we're looking at the caregiver dashboard. There's also an hours analysis. And then on the right where it says filters, in some of the dashboards, it's very extensive, but the filters say, hey, what are you looking at? Do you want to look within a specific region, a specific caregiver status? And what you're tracking here is, hey, how many applicants do we have coming in? How many total active caregivers do we have? Also things like, on average, how long are our caregivers staying with our agency? It's a really important number to track. And then you can see where it says 66.4, and there's that little needle there. So this is something AxisCare users absolutely love this feature. It's the turnover rate. So we're trying to keep that needle in the green, which would be under 50%, like I said. So that's always looking at the last 12 months. What was your annual turnover rate over a rolling 12 months there? And then on the right, it'll tell you how many total you had terminated. And then what was your average monthly census? On average, how many caregivers did you have each month? And then if we scroll down, which you can just go to the next slide for us today, Erin, you can see a different part of that same dashboard here. And so this is a great way to look at your trends. Guess what? You don't have to do any work to see all of this. If you're an AxisCare user, you can email me and say, hey, I want to start using business intelligence. We'll set it up for you and get you going. And all of this automatically pulls in because all of this data is already inside your home care management software. You have this data, especially if you're tracking termination dates, hire dates, that sort of thing. You have this data. Are you using it? And so this is a really easy way that you can just pull in. So you can see on the right, I set the dates. I want to look at 2023 and 2022, all of my caregivers that were hired and terminated within those dates. So then we can look month over month. And when you hover over with your mouse, it won't do it now, it's a screenshot, but how many caregivers applied, how many in the green were how many total did we hire? The red is how many were terminated. And then when you hover over, you get a little dot of the applicant to hire ratio. And where this comes in for recruitment, a strategy for recruitment is when you're pulling these numbers here, you can look back there at April of 2022, and you can say, okay, what happened in April of 2022 that we had 40 applicants, 40 applications come in of new caregivers, and how can we reproduce that? So were we using a different ad in April, or did we place our ad in different spaces, maybe geographically, online? Were we targeting, we're using SEO differently? And how can we reproduce that when we were really successful? Because if you look at January, even December, November, October, the application rate is going way down. So understanding this and being able to visualize the trends and, just sneak peek, you can do the same visualizations from lots of different sets of data, whether it's your gross revenue, your total hours billed, lots of like how many hours each of your clients are receiving. So using a tool like this is really the way to get from an agency that's making it to an agency that's thriving. Let's go to the next slide, Erin. Okay, so let's get down to some actual boots on the ground tactics you can use. So once you've looked at this data, you've set your personal annual and monthly retention goals, then you can formulate a strategic plan to see your retention increase. So here's a few ideas. I've got 4 here. Let's keep it simple. The first is strategic recruitment. So we have 2 of those dashboards in the BI, business intelligence, we call it BI, that you just saw, are maps of, hey, how many clients live in this area and how many caregivers live in this area? Where do we need to recruit from? Where do we need to be spending time and resources recruiting from geographically in order to make sure that all of our clients are cared for? So here's a thought. Your caregivers are quitting when they're constantly being asked to drive really far away from their home. So another tool that we have inside of AxisCare, a lot of you guys probably have as well, I'm not sure, I hope you do, is a scheduling feature where when you are scheduling for your clients, it automatically populates which caregivers are a best fit based on quite a few things. One of them is location, how close they are to the client's home, their home to the client's home. Another thing is client matching. So you can go in there and say, hey, this caregiver is allergic to dogs and doesn't like houses that have oak trees. And so if it is not a good match for one of your clients because she has a dog and surrounded by oak trees, it will not suggest that caregiver be sent to that client's home. And that is super important. Those small strategic tools inside your home care management software that can do the work for you. So, right, be efficient, save time, save headaches, make more money. Just save yourself all of the work there and just have some offload it. Somebody else can do it. A system can do it for you and say, this is who's a good fit. And your caregivers are going to be happier when you assign them to the right clients that are a great fit for them. Secondly, communicate well from the beginning. So we have chat features through our mobile app. All of our caregivers that use AxisCare have the mobile app. That's how they clock in, clock out. They mark off their ADLs. It's also how the office communicates with the caregivers. That's, you know, HIPAA compliant. There's a lot of, you know, we've done all of this work around it for you, so you can communicate well, effectively. Research is showing us that communication and a lack thereof is one of the big reasons for caregiver turnover. So you need to be communicating well right from the beginning, talking about casting vision for why are you running this home care agency, and how can they get on board with that vision. The third one, scheduling caregivers for their preferred weekly hours. This is another tool inside of AxisCare. So in addition to that client matching and into that location matching, so you can say how many weekly hours each one of your caregivers wants to be working every week inside the system. And then as you're creating the schedule, or your scheduler's doing it for you, it's going to tell you and give you a little percentage of how close they are to their preferred weekly hours. So if they want 20 hours a week, it's going to count up to that 20 hours a week. And so you can schedule everyone easily without having to remember it all, without having all these spreadsheets outside of your software. Just easily plug them in. And when caregivers are receiving their preferred number of hours every week, that keeps them from getting a second job at Target or Walmart or a second job at a different home care agency. That's who we are losing caregivers to. A lot of it is the Walmart, Target jobs, and a lot of it is just a second job with another home care agency and then having to share hours. If you could give your caregivers their preferred weekly hours, you would keep them a lot more. And then finally, training. A lack of training is what we're seeing why caregivers are leaving. So train your caregivers, both at the onboarding when they first come on, of course, and then continuing education. So you want to figure out, like, hey, in your great communication with them, what specifically you, caregiver, Jane Smith, what are you interested in? Alzheimer's? Let's get you an additional Alzheimer's certificate here. We'll match you with our Alzheimer's clients. Invest in their continuing education, in their development, so that their job satisfaction is increased. And when you're thinking about a caregiver training platform, you're thinking about a platform that is engaging, meaning they're going to want to do the training. It's not boring. It's not reading a packet of paperwork you've printed out for them or forcing them to drive into an office to get training. It's engaging. It feels like playing like an app, a game on your phone. You want a platform that's accessible. If you guys didn't know, I am talking about CareAcademy right now. So that you need something accessible. So from right inside the mobile app, inside of AxisCare, when your caregivers have their mobile app on their phone, they're clicking on the menu button inside where they're logging in, logging out, click training, and it automatically takes them over to the CareAcademy courses that you have assigned to them from inside AxisCare. AxisCare and CareAcademy have an integration. Our systems speak to one another, create profiles in each other's systems for, all of your AxisCare caregivers, automatically create profiles inside of CareAcademy for you. So then your caregivers can super easily access the training that you have already assigned to them from inside AxisCare. And you want whatever training platform you use to be trackable. You want to be able to log in, see, hey, what have they completed? What is not completed? Can I store that inside of my software system and underneath certifications and evaluations? So I'm going to stop talking now. I want to open it up a little bit. We can go to the next slide, Erin, and take it over to more of a discussion format.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. Okay, so just a couple questions to build off of the things that you have set up for us already. So this one's for both of you. Maybe we'll start with Jessica. We talked about turnover data a lot, looking at who has left and things like that over the last year. What other kinds of things besides turnover can we be looking at that would help us sort of get a better picture of the things that we might be dealing with in terms of struggles with recruitment and retention?
Yeah, like I said, around building contacts, I think there's a lot of different data points. It's just a matter of what you've access to and what's important to you. But I think looking at employee satisfaction or any other data to help you kind of understand the picture of like why people are turning over or not staying with your organization. Courtney was talking about the training experience and employee onboarding experience. So any data you have around like time to first assignment, right? And people being out in the field to getting paid, and meeting the kind of goals that's why they're working at your organization, like understanding that whole picture, so that you can build those efficiencies. I think Courtney gave really good examples of data you can look at as far as like your recruitment pipeline, right? Like how many people are applying to your job, how many you're hiring, how many are then being terminated. Like all those kind of build a more complete picture of your recruitment and retention so that you can create a targeted strategy. And those are some examples I can think of. I don't know if Courtney has anything to add.
That's a pretty good answer. I just think about, just the kinds of data that people should be collecting. I mean, all of it. I'm such a data nerd. I know Jessica is too. I'm like, you want to be recording all of your data, and you don't want to be recording it in a million different spreadsheets. Put it in one spot. Make your life easy. Put it in one spot. Put it all inside of your home care management software. So all those hire dates, all those termination dates, regions that your clients and your caregivers live in, referral sources. That's a huge one. Who is referring new caregivers to you? Who is referring new clients to you? Keep track of that over time. Be looking at those referral sources and do your marketing, right? So when you think about marketing, you don't have to think, we need a big agency to do this for us. This has to be overwhelming. Even for tiny agencies, if you are tracking your referral sources over time, who's referring different clients and caregivers to you, it's easy to send cards at the holiday season, to do monthly phone calls, to do, stopping by. If it's a local nursing home or a hospital, stop by, maybe bring little gifts to your point of contact there. These are very effective marketing tools for you guys to really help recruit more clients and or caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so you covered, Courtney, some of the main reasons for struggles with retention. The big one being not getting your preferred hours or having to drive really far away, things like that are probably pretty common. So say everybody goes back and they look at the data that they have from last year and they start thinking of all the great ways that they can collect better data for next year, but they look at what they had last year and they think, okay, there are a lot of things that I need to do. I'm overwhelmed with all of the different changes I'm seeing that I might need to make in order to retain my caregivers better for 2023. What is something that you suggest that somebody can do in terms of, let's start with recruitment and then we'll go to retention. So in terms of recruitment, what can agencies do like today or this week or next week? Something easy and simple that can start getting people looking towards like more of an optimistic lens of like, okay, this can be done. What's something quick that people can do to help address recruitment issues?
You mean take it first, Jessica? Okay. Obviously, I feel like I don't want to keep saying this over and over again, but looking at your data, remember I showed you that 1 month where that spike in April where we saw lots of applicants coming in. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you can find 1 month where you had a great results in your state, city, region, replicate that. Do that again. Figure out, how did that happen? Was it what we wrote, where we placed it, a specific referral source that we were speaking with? Just don't reinvent the wheel. So don't stress yourself out. You don't have to come out with a whole new thing. Do what has worked in the past for you before. Also, we would love to hear that in the chat, what has worked for you. If you've seen a lot of applicants come in from a certain space. The other thing I would recommend is that all of you guys are using a home care management software, I assume, for clock-ins, clock-out scheduling, that sort of thing. And most of us have integrations with various companies that do recruitment. So there are different ways to recruit. There's different integrations. Just reach out to your home care management software. If you're with AxisCare, you can reach out to me, reach out to whoever your management software is and say, hey, what integrations do you guys have that would help me recruit more caregivers? There's lots of great organizations, companies in our industry like Hireology, who do just that, only that. And then they can integrate in with your system. So you're saving time. And with one click, you can be in their system and say, hey, here's all of our applicants. And they just push over into your home care management software. And so you have profiles created for those applicants that you can click a button and say, convert to caregiver, and save you a lot of time. So those are my two. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just recreate what you've already done in the past. And then the other one is reach out to your management software and see if you have any integrations available to you with other companies. Talk to those other companies, get a demo of their platform for recruitment.
I have nothing to add. That was great. I think, I mean, my only thing is that I think what I want people to walk away from this webinar with is that they have tools at their disposal. There are things readily available to them that they can take action on right now. They don't have to acquire anything new. Like Courtney said, within AxisCare, they have a business intelligence tool that can show you your data, and you can kind of glean insights to take action. So I think those are two great steps that people can take this week, to make some changes.
Awesome. Courtney, you want to tackle that same question for retention?
Sure. Quick and simple things you can do for retention. Keep the caregivers there. The number one thing, I'm going to repeat myself again, but is communication. That is the hill that I will die on. Communicate with your caregivers. Over communicate about your values. I think really casting vision, inspiring your caregivers and your employees of why do we serve this population? Why is the work that you're doing important to our community, to the people that we're serving, to their families? Make them feel like heroes, and communicate well about their shifts, about their pay, about their training. Make sure that you guys have really, really good communication and good systems in place to communicate with them. Like I said, when you start communicating about clients, make sure it's HIPAA compliant. So using like a chat feature inside of the AxisCare mobile app. But just make sure that your communication is a focus. And then the other thing I would say would be continuing education. So that training piece from the very beginning, we've seen that most turnover happens within the first 90 days of a caregiver coming on with a new agency. And so in that first 90 days, if you can vision cast and then you can train them well with a platform that they enjoy their training, like CareAcademy, you can really grab them, and keep them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think meeting caregivers where they are and really understanding your workforce is the key to kind of retaining them, right? Do you understand their values? If they value education, and a lot of people believe, this is caregiving is a hard job, and a lot of people believe this is their calling, right? Yeah. And so if you can empower them with the resources they need to be successful, they'll stay. I truly believe that, right? I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of caregivers, family caregivers, professional caregivers, and they really want to do a good job, right? They really care about their clients, but in order for them to do that, they need to feel supported so that they can do that. So, like CareAcademy is a great platform as far as engaging with their education. It's accessible, it's mobile friendly. We have programs like the Career Path that provides a roadmap for them to kind of attain if they're interested in continuing their education and obtaining a college degree through our partnership with Southern New Hampshire University. So there are a lot of things that are available, but if you kind of understand your caregivers and meet them where they are, I think you have a better chance of success in retaining them over the long term.
Awesome, thank you. One more question, and then we'll go to our audience Q&A. There's a couple questions in there. If y'all have questions, feel free to go ahead and pop them in the Q&A. But before that, just one more question. So for this one, Courtney, you mentioned that a good goal is to try and keep your retention at 50%. Say somebody looks and they see that it's at, I don't know, 18%. Hitting 50% this year might be unattainable. It might be a huge leap, right? So how do you go about setting goals that are realistic and attainable, as opposed to shooting for the moon and then being discouraged at the end of the year?
Right, yeah. So you would know that, okay, 50% is so the way that works is a 50% is your turnover. So how many are quitting? So you want the number to be lower. So if you have, we often see, I think in my example of the demo side, it was like a 66% turnover ratio. So that was in the yellow approaching red. That means 66% of your employees have quit over the last year. And so you are trying to keep that number really, really low, under 50%. So let's say you're really high, you say you're at 70%, start it with percentages, start it just marking it down, create your plan of action, and then see what works, and then track it, right? So look at month over month. So, in the month of February, we're going to be focusing on communication and continuing education. So we're going to vision cast. I'm going to have a coffee with all of our caregivers who have been here less than 90 days. I'm going to make a phone call to every other caregiver once a month just to check in, see how they're doing. Create a plan that you write down with some ideas like that, and then track it. See what your turnover ratios is then in that month. How many applied, how many were hired, how many were terminated, and what's that applicant to hire ratio month over month. So that, yeah, I think that was kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, Erin, but that's what I've got on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. It's just about, like Courtney said, it's about, if you know your numbers, then you can know where you're trying to go, right? If you're starting at 85, your long-term goal may just to be under 50%. So you may be like, okay, if I can just incrementally move it down, 85, 80, 75, like my first goal might be 75%, right? If I can get under 75%, I'm trending. The point is to be trending in the right direction. So then you'll meet your goal over the long term. And then you can look at those historical trends. Where am I most successful? It's like the first quarter really hard, right? So you maybe have a more conservative goal versus like summer is excellent for recruiting, right? So I'm gonna be more ambitious about my goal because I know this is where I've seen the most success. People would like to be hired in the summer. I don't know, but just if you have that context, then you can kind of create more realistic goals that are gonna also inspire your team, right? If you set something that's unrealistic, people are like, oh, like, how are we going to achieve that? Is that realistic? But if you set something realistic, like they'll really feel empowered and really rally around the goal and be like, oh, I think we can achieve this as a company, right? And get your whole team involved, right? If people know where you're if you share this data and say, hey, this is where we're trending at company, people feel like they're part of something. They feel like they're involved. They can have an impact too. So.
You. All right, so we will go ahead and move on to our Q&A. We got 2 questions. The first one is, what are agencies doing to combat overtime? I don't know if y'all have seen any of that going on. If you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, we have, in the business intelligence, you can look at your overtime month over month, week over week, day by day, the average number of caregivers, hours of overtime, and how many caregivers had overtime. And the things that we're seeing agencies do to combat it is, first of all, doing that preferred weekly hours tool, so they understand how many hours each caregiver wants. And then as your scheduler is making the schedule, you're seeing that count up. And then the other thing is that what I mentioned before, that strategic recruiting. So you're falling into overtime when, you know, you don't have the right caregivers in the right geographic location to take care of your clients. So if you will strategically recruit the caregivers in a certain location based on where your clients live, and y'all, I know I'm asking for a lot by saying the right caregivers who are also, but a lot of times it's just a match, right? I know you guys are like, we'll take anybody. I know, you know, we have a question here about how do we even get people to show up to interviews. We'll take anyone, but you know, just to match them up with their preferences of, you know, I'm allergic to dogs or whatever. And then you won't have one caregiver or a handful of caregivers overperforming and other caregivers underperforming and taking less hours, potentially because they're getting a second job with a different agency or elsewhere.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and then we will jump to our next question, which is, I have been having trouble getting caregivers to show up for interviews. I've been doing my best to build relationships during phone interviews and talking about all the bonus incentives for joining our team, yet I have scheduled 5 interviews for a day and might have 1 show up. What are some other ways to get caregivers to show up for interviews?
You want to take it, Jessica?
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, this is a challenging question. One, I think we just had to put in the context that recruiting and hiring is competitive, right? Like just in general, just job market, I think everybody has challenges. As far as like getting people to show up, one, I have to ask kind of, you know, what's the time frame between when people apply and when they're scheduled for a phone interview? Because you have to be timely, again, because they may be applying to multiple jobs, getting interviews. So the quicker your kind of you know, like their hiring schedule is, I think people have more success getting people hired, right? Because you want to keep people engaged. I think Courtney makes a good point about communication with your own employees already, but also conversation, which you say you're already doing, is building relationships and keeping communication open with your talent pipeline and to make sure people understand what's coming next, right? And setting expectations. So those are some of the things I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know, Courtney, you have any other kind of suggestions, but I know it's hard, but you know, I think the quicker you can get people in your moving through your pipeline, the more successful you're going to be. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would agree that that's the number one thing, is to get them in there as quickly to application being turned in. If you want that in-person interview, do it as fast as possible while they're still engaged, excited about you, and other options haven't taken their focus off of you. The other thing might be considering where your office is. So are you hiring client or caregivers who are pretty far away from your office because you have clients out that way? And are you, you know, could you do an interview at a coffee shop at a Starbucks near their house, something like that? And then, you know, I mean, as sad as this is, Tolan, if those caregivers who don't show up for interviews, those are going to be the ones who don't show up for shifts as well. So you're kind of weeding out those caregivers as part of the interview process, weeding them out. And as frustrating as it is, you know, there are some things you can do, but if they are no call, no shows, they're going to continue to be no call, no shows. You don't want to try to get them back.
Great points.
All right, thank you. Okay, that was all of our questions. So we will now circle back to our activity from before. Everyone loves a good circle back. So think about those things that you wrote down or thought about, or however it was that you recorded them. Think about what we talked about, what you know about your agency, those things. And we have a couple more things for you to do. So one is to write down 2 or 3 things that you could do this week to work toward improving your retention and recruitment in 2023. So think about those quick and simple things that Jessica and Courtney suggested for you, things like that. And then the second one is, what's one question that you still have for us? We always like to know what people are still wanting to hear at the end of our webinars and things like that. So what's one question you still have for us? And feel free to chat that question to me or send it to me in an email at ehill@careacademy.com so that we can add that content to later webinars. And while you all do that, I will go ahead and publish a poll that we have just to gauge some interest in CareAcademy, as well as try to gather some information about what sort of webinar content you would like to see in the upcoming year. So once you're done with this activity, if you could hit that poll, that would be great. And then we have a couple quick slides for you, and then we will be done. For those of you who have to hop to other meetings and things like that, we will send all of this information out. We'll send the slide deck as well as the recording out to everyone who registered. Yeah, so I'll give you about 2 minutes to do the poll and the wrap-up activity, and then we'll do our last couple slides and be done. While you're doing that, we do have one suggestion from Marina, who popped into our Q&A to say that one thing that really helped in regard to getting candidates was to move quickly on the application by reaching out within 24 hours whenever that was possible. So that's one more suggestion for everyone. All right, thank you all for that. Feel free to keep sending me your questions that you still had for us. Just wanted to let you all know that if you wanted to start a 14-day free trial with CareAcademy, Courtney was very lovely to give us a little plug. We do have that engaging and mobile-friendly training platform for you all. We have continuing education. We have tons of upskilling opportunities, things like that, that caregivers really seem to enjoy here at CareAcademy. And if you do start a free trial, you will be entered to win a $500 Yeti cooler, which is a pretty cool prize if you ask me. So go ahead and head to careacademy.com/14-day free trial if you want to enter and win that cooler, because that's a nice cooler. All right. Well, that is all from us. Thank you so much for coming today. We will be back with the Retention and Recruitment webinar series on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. So we'll be back in February, so keep an eye out for your emails for a registration link for that in the next couple weeks. Thank you so much, Jessica and Courtney, and thank you to everybody for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, bye everybody.